Skeleton Advanced Recon Officer, reporting to the reigning Jarl of Kaer Throlde. Subject: Military Survey of White Orchard. Purpose: ascertaining value of location for future raids. Our current quarry is the village of White Orchard along a tributary of the river Izima on the road to Vizima. Recently captured in the ongoing conflict with the Black Ones, this report will be covering the production of produce and animal products, along with their ability to pay the taxes imposed by the Black Ones, taking stock of the remnants for future raids. Our first survey took aim at finding the local rye production. To do so, we find the length of our agent's stride being 30 inches, given his height of 6 feet 2 inches, and then had to measure the perimeter of the fields using a pin on our map. Doing so, we do a bit of math, converting the paces first into inches and then into feet. From there, we convert that into the square footage of the field, and from that, we find the acreage. From here, the acreage can then be used to estimate roughly how much grain would be produced per acre, both in kilograms and bushels, as well as pounds, depending on the needs at the time. According to some papers I found using some light research, the yield we have ended up with is somewhere around 7 to 10 bushels per acre. Again, depending on a whole host of variables, ranging from weather, climate, and individual year conditions, though we shall be charitable towards the peasants and try to ascertain the highest value possible, assuming maximum yields on all crops or animal products. Dividing up the fields into sectors for quicker work, these are our findings. The sectors are as follows: Wildenvent Farm, south of the road, outskirts, north of the road, and north of the river. The following segment will be an example as to how we will be referencing all of the numbers and values you see as we go through this report. If things seem a little front-loaded here, this is why. Wildenvent Farm appears to be owned and operated by one Dune Wildenvent and his wife, Desje. Fields and trees here are mostly unharvested, with a total acreage of 1.6 acres of workable land used for rye. From this, doing our calculations, we can get about 16.6 bushels of grain come harvest. The apple trees on the property appear to be of the semi-dwarf variety, which can be, in theory, producing up to 750 apples per year per tree, or around 25 gallons of cider once processed, again, not taking into account lossage. With this, we will be taking the highest valuable we can, found across multiple sources, in this case being 750. And with that, let's get to work. Having 16 trees on the property, found by a really quick run around using the camera mode, it helps to not have things be moving around, as well as marking them off on paper, physically. We have 16 trees on the property, each producing the 750 apples a year, which would get us to around 12,000 apples per year for the entire property, ending up with around 400 gallons of cider, no accounting for lossage. Easily more than enough to drown in. For other things of note on the property, we have a dog and a flock of 10 chickens, 2 of them being roosters, resulting in egg production for the chickens at the time being an estimated 85 eggs per bird, with geese, seen later, producing about 60 per bird. So, with this property having a total of 8 producing chickens, that leaves the total eggs at 680 per year. A fairly decent amount to work with. So looking over the entire property, this is how everything will be organized in the future. Quick lists of all that's produced, harvested, and unharvested. Here, we have rye, 16.6 bushels, apples, 12,000, eggs, chicken, 680. There's a local bee nest for pollination of the flowers for when it blooms with a wonderful white color, giving the place its name, White Orchard. Here, we also have easy access to a river, though it is heavily polluted by corpses due to the ongoing war. There is a long walk to the fresh well over in the abandoned town, but it'll do in this time of crisis. There's also a local deer and rabbit population for supplementing the diet of meat if poaching is something they are interested in. So, going through with this all, there are rough estimates that it takes about 120 pounds of rye, or 2 bushels per person, to survive a year in some sources. And with the 4-person population, this means that the needed grain to survive a year for this property would be 8 bushels in total. And given the number of 16 bushels harvested, this would leave 8 to be sold or paid to the reigning lord, of course, assuming the lord was being particularly generous and only took what was left over for his taxes. Combining this all in all, this little piece of property on the outskirts seems to be perfectly self-reliant, and on a good year, without an invading army breathing down their necks and imposing new taxes, they would most likely have some leftovers to sell and trade with, particularly regarding apples, as they seem to have a mighty fine surplus. So, having this little aspect noted down and set as an example, we'll be gathering all of the information and doing a run-through at the end with all the cards on the table. So with that, let's get going. As stated before, the way that we find the general shape of the field is by standing in a corner and placing a map marker on the other corner that we need. I'm rounding most of these shapes off to squares or rectangles, except for a few notable ones which are treated as triangles. Length times width equals the square footage of the area, and with that, throw that all together, congratulations, you have the square footage, and there, the acreage. Doing this piece by piece, checking off each of the fields as we come across it, we're also double checking the amount of trees that are here. We will not be checking which are blooming and which are not. We will just simply be assuming that all are producing. Other plants of note, namely hops, will also be noted down, purely as they won't count towards wheat production. With this, we will also be doing a quick survey of the people here. We will assume that all of them are working the farm fields as they go, and that generally we don't need to account for outside jobs beyond the hunter, who will be his own separate mark. So, having quickly sped up through the process of gathering all that information, quickly ignored Tamara off in the herbalist's hut, let's get to our findings. First up, we have the south of the road. Almost completely unharvested. This has 4.1 bushels of rye, 33,750 apples. There are 4 cows in this area, which would produce, on average, about 120 gallons per cow in the time frame, coming out to around 480 gallons per year. This would most likely be quickly changed into farmer's cheese or something similar so it wouldn't spoil, though if you did wish to keep the milk relatively fresh for longer, you could put a frog inside it and it would generally keep it fresh. Make sure the frog has peed beforehand, as you don't want the milk to spoil. Here we have another small flock of chickens, with a production of eggs coming out to about 170, and a few geese, production being 240. Moving on to the outskirts of the town, we have rye. Yet another field, 3.12 bushels. This has been harvested. Moving up inside of the town limits, north of the road, we have 1.1 bushels of rye that is unharvested, 6.7 bushels that is harvested. There's a wood anemone patch. Thank you to the plant identification subreddit for quickly noting this down. Very small patch. I have yet to find a specific use for it, though it might partially be how the town got its name of White Orchard. White flowers, the orchards all around it, the fact that apple blossoms are generally white, you get the general idea. And now we move north of the river. Here we get some actual larger fields. This is going to result in the following yields. The rye is about 5.6 bushels unharvested, 9 bushels harvested, about 0.06 acres of hops. There's another unknown green plant, which has 1.81 acres found, and an orchard of 45 adult trees and 71 juvenile, which have been noted down with some lower yields, giving us a total of 60,375 apples. The lower yields have simply been taken under the dwarf tree umbrella in terms of production, not the semi-dwarf seen by other trees. So, having gathered together the whole set of information, let's collate it into a list so that we're able to get a general idea of how everything looks. For rye, we have a total of 46.22 bushels. 27 of those bushels are unharvested, 18 of which have been harvested. For apples, we have 106,125 apples. This is very close to too many apples. I really hope that they like apple pie and cobbler, because otherwise, this is a very large amount of produce to be working with at any time of the year. The total chicken eggs are 850. Goose eggs come out to 240. For cow milk, there's 480 gallons. Chicken milk. Why the fuck is this in the script? What? Alright, let me double check if a chicken can be milked. Goat milk, 44 gallons. Though these goats are very interesting, mainly for one reason in particular. Naturally, goats have two sets of teats in their udder. This generally correlates with them more often than not having twins, but beyond that, they're very normal, if hodgepodge looking goats, beyond one fact. They have 4 teats. If I had to guess, somebody probably took the image of the cow udder that they were working with and just stapled it onto the goats. And so, we have this amalgamation of an alpine meat goat hybrid that has 4 udders and is in general an abomination. Looking at a local herd of goats that I know, as you can see, they only have 2 teats. These ones are alpine breeds, generally looking similar. You can see some of the coloration of the others, looking fairly similar to the Oberhasli, though generally we're just going to count these as normal goats and not increase the milk production in any way. Keep things simple. Other things of note, we have a smattering of beehives around, generally good for pollination and honey, should that be needed. There's a herbalist off in the fields for your general healing and all that. There's well water, a short walk down the road, though it was recently inhabited by a spirit of some sort, has been taken care of by the time our scouts went upon this village. And there's fish of unknown quantities, and I can tell you there are fish because every day there is a man fishing in the fields. We have yet to understand how successful he is in these efforts. So, having the total production yields of this place figured out, we now need to do a population census. This will involve stalking around in the middle of the night, breaking and entering, generally smashing up and taking anything that our Skelligan forces find useful, and also counting the people inside. Purely for the sake of math, we will be counting 2 children as 1 person when it comes to food production. So, getting this impromptu census out of the way, let's get started. Throughout the village proper, we have found the following. There is a total population of 36 for consumption. So, this is 17 men, 11 women, and 8 children, both male and female, counted as 1. With all this thrown together, and ignoring the outskirts, namely the lumber mills, ruined villages, people generally hiding out in the sticks, namely the Temerian army, we will be using this as our set of numbers when it comes to figuring out consumption. And going off of a Wikipedia article I found on medieval cuisine, granted, this one is noted for it being monks in an abbey. We'll just use this as it has been the only real solid numbers I can find. You'll be able to get a quick estimate of how much someone should theoretically be eating in a day. Taking the following numbers will be making things simple. 2 pounds of flour is going to equal roughly the 2 pounds of bread they would eat in a day. This is 1/30th of a bushel. And the following numbers won't be taken into the calculations, as I think we already know exactly where this is going to end up in terms of their survivability, even without augmenting their diet from additional sources such as poached meat from the woods, honey, fish, any additional calories they could find. These were also included in the diet of this group of monks. 5 eggs a day and 2 pounds of meat a day. It seems that these people were eating well. With all of this noted down, if we were to count, like I said, each child as half a person for the matter of consumption, that means that we would need roughly 64 pounds of flour a day. And from here, figuring it out across the whole year, multiplying by 365, that means we need 23,360 pounds of flour needed to survive if they are eating every day for the year, which, when we boil it down to it, assuming that a bushel weighs 60 pounds, and divide our number of 23,360 by 60, that means that we need about 389 bushels of grain. Let's round that up to 340. So the answer is no. White Orchard will not survive, even if they refuse to pay the taxes required of them, as we are currently short about 20,000 pounds of rye.
Winds
or,
howling.
if you want to get a more simple number, they're missing 10 tons of rye. But this is where the fun begins. And in the style of Mythbusters, let's go a little beyond and try to make it work. So, doing another round of math, if we want them to survive, let's make their fields bigger. Doing a very quick calculation, it needs to be about 8.5 times bigger. And again, I like easy math, so let's round up to 10. Just slap another 0 on it. So, with the fields being that much bigger, we now have some actual grain left over to give the invaders once the year is out. Granted, it is only 4,370 pounds extra, but if we run that back into bushels, once again, taking 4,370, dividing that by 60, that leaves us with 72 bushels. So, looking that over, that gives us well enough to cover the original number of bushels brought forward by the aldermen when Geralt originally reached the area, the Nilfgaardian captain. And if you remember, that number was 40 bushels. So, out of the remaining 70 bushels, if we take this, that leaves us 30 left over. The number that was proposed by the Nilfgaardian commander. And with this, I'm going to assume that the Temerians already took some when they rolled through. Let's shoot for the number of 40 offered before, purely because they are their own countrymen, and I feel that most likely they would be willing to give that amount, maybe a little more, to support their boys back home, especially considering the battle is right on their doorstep. So with this, if we take into the consideration the 30 offered by the Nilfgaardian commander, congratulations, you have broke even. Though, I think it is fair to assume that to ingratiate themselves with the invaders, generally get themselves not killed, they might offer a little more than they would normally be willing or able to give, again, purely to ingratiate themselves with their conquerors. So, with that, it won't put them to the point of starving, but let's even say that they originally gave the Temerians 50 bushels. That only puts them in the red by 10 bushels. So generally, that wouldn't be able to fully support them, maybe a little malnourished, though it is worth noting that all of these reference points I have been given, these are taken from monks. I think it's safe to say that peasants would easily be able to survive, even with maybe 10 to 20 bushels less than was needed. So, given all this, we have also inadvertently found how much White Orchard was shrunk down to make the area more playable, particularly with CD Projekt's idea of every 30 seconds you should run into something interesting. Taking that number and multiplying it by the 10 we did before, that now gives us 300 seconds between everything of note. That means that about every 5 minutes or so, you theoretically would be running into something interesting. That's not quite as amusing if it was fully sized up, though it might be more realistic given the proper size of the world. So, doing a bit of adjustments, let's try and see how our realistic field size would look. Looking at it, this does look a bit less fun to go wandering around, particularly with the variety of environments. Almost all of the map is now fields, and given that I haven't fully drawn it out, I think all of it might be fields, though, again, we'll see when this actually comes on screen. So, to all of you who are actual math people, please do feel free to check out my math. I think I got it all right, but there is very much a reason why I went into a career field that doesn't use math as much as some others. Again, math wasn't my greatest class, but please do let me know your thoughts on this, because I think it's interesting to find just how much the map has been scaled down, the official number being 8.5, though again, for my own means, I had it be 10. So, thank you all so much for watching. I've got a few ideas cooking up, some involving Cyberpunk 2077, though interestingly enough, I did find the same number of 8.5 being used there. For every second in the real world that we count, it seems that 8.5 seconds in Cyberpunk pass. The way I was able to find this out was just sitting in the screen camera for doing some quick hacks and noticing how fast the day was ticking by. Something interesting to note. 8 to 8.5 seems to be the number that CDPR scales things. Though, I might have to send them an email, see if I can get any official word on whether or not that's merely a happy accident or entirely intentional. Rambling aside, thank you for watching. Like I said, few ideas cooking up, but won't say too much as to not make fake promises. But yeah, you all know the drill. Stuff down below, do with it as you see fit. As always, I am Sven. There's going to be some playlists linked if there's other stuff you want to take a look at. I'm Sven, and this is Elven Prince, signing out.